Welcome to the Explainer. Think about the emotional toll of rooting for a team that, historically, just always seemed to fall short. Today, we're looking at one of the most dramatic, emotionally charged heroes' journeys in all of international sports, the epic evolution of the Portugal National Football Team. This is the story of a nation that spent literal decades wandering in the sporting wilderness, surviving heartbreak after heartbreak, only to rise up and absolutely conquer Europe. Okay, let's dive right into this. How exactly did a team that missed 14 World Cups in the 20th century transform into the absolute global football powerhouse we know today? Well, it definitely wasn't an overnight success. It took generations of talent, some seriously agonizing near misses, and ultimately a relentless will to win. To truly get a handle on this transformation, we are going to explore this multi-generational saga in 6 acts. 1. The early struggles. 2. Eusébio and Osmagrisos. 3. The Golden Generation. 4. Heartbreak and Transition. 5. The Cristiano Ronaldo era. And 6. Champions of Europe. Let's start with part 1, the early struggles, and their years in the footballing wilderness. Let's set the scene here, because before the trophies and the global superstars, the contrast between eras is just staggering. In the entirety of the 20th century, out of 16 World Cups, Portugal only qualified for 2, 1966 and 1986, but flip to the 21st century and it's an entirely different reality. We're talking an uninterrupted, perfect streak of qualifying for every single World Cup and European Championship. Before we dig into those early dark days, let's talk about their identity. They're famously known as the Seleção das Quinhas. This translates to the team of the quincunxes, which is a direct reference to the 5 blue shields you see on the Portuguese national flag. It's not just a catchy nickname, right? It really anchors the team to a deep sense of national identity, pride, and centuries of history. But man, that national pride took a continuous beating in their early decades. Imagine losing your very first official match 3-1 to your biggest rivals, Spain, back in 1921. Now imagine them absolutely crushing you 11-1 on aggregate a decade later when you're just trying to qualify for the World Cup. And it got worse. We're talking a brutal 10-0 loss to England right at home in Lisbon in 1947, and then a humiliating 9-1 loss to Austria in the 1954 qualifiers. For a long time, they were, without a doubt, massive underdogs on the world stage. But every dark age eventually ends. That brings us to Chapter 2, Eusébio and Osmagrisos, and Portugal's first real burst of brilliance. Everything changed for them in the 1960s. A core of players from a totally dominant Benfica club side finally broke the curse and qualified for the 1966 World Cup. And the catalyst for this massive shift can really be summed up with one number: 9. That is the insane number of goals scored by their legendary striker Eusébio at that tournament. Known as the Black Panther, his incredible athleticism and technique made him the top scorer and firmly, finally, put Portugal on the global footballing map. That 1966 World Cup run was pure box office. This squad, affectionately called Osmagrisos after a famous 15th century poem, didn't just survive their group, they actually dismantled the 2-time defending champions Brazil 3-1. Then, in a quarterfinal that people still talk about today, they fell behind 3-0 to North Korea, but Eusébio single-handedly rescued them with 4 straight goals to win it 5-3. Unbelievable. They ultimately fell to hosts England 2-1 in the semifinals, a match totally mired in controversy because FIFA forced a sudden, unexpected venue change to London. But they bounced right back to beat the Soviet Union and secure a spectacular best-ever third-place finish. This brings us to era number 3, the Golden Generation and a massive resurgence of talent. After that 1966 high, Portugal kind of slipped back into the shadows for a few decades. But by the mid-1990s, heavy investments in youth academies began to pay off, and a new crop of incredibly gifted players emerged. This era was defined by absolute legends. You had Vitor Baia locking things down in goal, the brilliant attacking midfielder Rui Costa, and the absolute leader of the pack, Luís Figo, who would go on to make 127 international appearances and score 32 goals for his country. The reason they were universally dubbed the Geração de Ouro, the Golden Generation, is because this exact core group of youngsters won back-to-back FIFA U20 World Cups in 1989 and 1991. They seamlessly carried that winning mentality straight into the senior squad, transforming Portugal from sporadic qualifiers into perennial tournament contenders all through the late 90s and early 2000s. Which naturally leads us into part 4, heartbreak and transition, being so close, yet so far. As any hardcore football fan knows perfectly well, having the best talent doesn't automatically hand you a trophy. What followed for this golden group was an absolute emotional roller coaster. In the year 2000, they played incredible football but lost the Euro semi-final to France in extra time after a highly controversial handball led to a Zinedine Zidane golden goal penalty. 4 years later, hosting the tournament themselves, they suffered the ultimate, devastating heartbreak, losing the final 1-0 to heavy underdogs Greece right in front of their home fans. By the 2006 World Cup, they battled to a solid fourth-place finish, but that essentially brought the curtain down on the original golden generation.
But from the ashes of that golden era emerged Part 5, the Cristiano Ronaldo era, and a period of completely shattered records.
Just as the old guard was stepping away, a young kid from Madeira was stepping right into the spotlight. To really understand Ronaldo's singular, relentless impact, just look at the staggering gap between first and second place in their all-time scoring history. Eusébio was a legend with 41 goals. Paulita pushed that to 47, but Cristiano Ronaldo? An unbelievable 143 international goals. It perfectly illustrates his unprecedented dominance as the greatest goalscorer in the history of international football. And it's not just the goals, is it? It's the sheer longevity. 228. That is the number of international caps Ronaldo has amassed for Portugal. It really punctuates just how remarkably long and dedicated his tenure has been, literally carrying the hopes of his nation on his shoulders for 2 straight decades. Which finally brings us to our last chapter, Champions of Europe, and the ultimate triumph. After nearly a century of heavy defeats, controversial exits, and devastating finals losses, the fans were finally rewarded. But the crazy thing about Euro 2016 is they didn't look like champions at all at first. They barely survived their group stage with 3 really ugly draws. Then, under manager Fernando Santos, they just relentlessly grinded out knockout wins by sheer willpower. And, in the final against host France in Paris, tragedy struck when Ronaldo went down injured early on. But the team rallied, and an unlikely hero named Eder struck a historic extra-time goal from way outside the box to win it 1-0. The ultimate emotional payoff had finally arrived. That 2016 victory was a total game-changer. It completely shattered the mental block and opened the floodgates for a sustained period of success. In 2017, they captured 3rd place at the Confederations Cup. In 2019, they won the first ever UEFA Nations League tournament on home soil. And just to prove it wasn't a fluke, they secured a record 2nd Nations League title in 2025. From losing 10-0 in the 1940s to missing almost every 20th century World Cup, to lifting 3 major international trophies in the span of a single decade. It is a truly epic evolution. But it leaves us with one incredibly exciting question. With 2 Nations League titles and a Euro trophy finally in their cabinet, and an amazing new generation of talent rising up alongside their veterans, what is next for the Seleção? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope you enjoyed the ride, and I'll catch you next time.